3, 2,
left of the ball.
1. I'm
in. Oh, shit. Hold on.
No. Married, not dead. It's all to the good. So, yeah. So, Jason, I want to warn you in advance because I am going to hit you with something off the top. Okay?
All right. Yep.
It's going.
Is it R. Kelly?
Well, bang! We got it in early.
Let's go ahead and get our edit out of the way and say no.
We got our mention in early. One day we're going to play R. Kelly Olympics, name title Olympics for sure.
I'll be out the first round.
Yeah, I'm not very good at that one.
If it's not the freaking weekend, I'm out.
That's not even the name of the song.
It is to me.
To Jason, it is.
Oh man. Well. So right now, secretly, everyone is thinking of an R. Kelly title.
No, they're not.
All right, let's start the ignition on this thing and get going.
Jesus.
No one caught that. Oh, okay, no. I'm gonna hit you.
We caught it.
I'm gonna hit you. Oh damn!
Go.
See the secret goal of mine is to say it and have no one catch it. Like I did with Scream the other week. The Michael Jackson Olympics.
I caught it.
Yeah, man.
No, I think Nick only caught it.
No,
Jason,
I
know Jason didn't catch it.
I didn't catch it.
I'm pretty sure I even said, like Janet Jackson. Like I.
Oh, you did say that shit,
that.
Yeah.
You're hard to get. You're hard to get.
On Michael, I'm always going to be hard to get on Michael. You could get me on R. Kelly all day long. Yeah, I mean, once you get past, I believe you can fly and
anything that was played at a graduation.
Is Aaliyah age ain't nothing but a number, or I don't even know.
He wrote it, but it's her song.
Yeah, so I don't even know.
Yeah,
and I'm okay with this.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. He has some fun titles. That's all. He has a lot of fun song titles. Okay, my favorite is "Half on a Baby." One of my favorites. All right, so let's let's pay the bills real quick. So today's episode is brought to you by Audible. I'm going to let you in on how to get a free audio book and a 30-day free trial from Audible. Can't talk. Because you're a listener of this podcast, all you have to do is go to audibletrial.com/MND podcast. And once you're there, you can choose from over 180,000 titles, including the latest additions to my library, for example, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson, Vagabonding by Rolf Potts, and Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Now, Brian, you just
finished it.
Ready Player One. What did you think?
Fantastic. I can't wait for it's actually a Spielberg adaptation of it. And there's some interesting twists that happen. And it's if someone that is kind of that enjoys things like I do, which is 80s culture, video games, nerd. Well, I guess everybody loves nerd culture now. Look at our freaking selection of movies, right? But yeah, it's fantastic. It even references Dungeons and Dragons and all kinds of stuff. And like it has one Dungeons and Dragons module that they talk about that me and my brother actually played when I was little. So it's fantastic. Are you
surprised, Brian, that it's taken this long to do an adaptation? Like it feels like it should have been a movie a long time ago, right?
It does. The thing is, I think Spielberg's had the rights for a while, and you know how they buy the rights immediately and then they just kind of sit on them.
It's true. I found out a couple of weeks ago that the movie Unforgiven that came out in I think 1992 was written in 83.
Oh, wow.
Jesus.
Yeah. So that movie had been around and going around Hollywood for a really long time, and they finally made it. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Okay. So yeah. go to Audible, trial.com/MND podcast. You'll get your free audiobook and a free 30-day trial. Do it today, and you'll love yourself for it. So, Jason, I told you I was going to hit you up with something emotional, thought-provoking, and tough right off the bat. So
you're not asking about Audible. Okay, never mind.
No. I'm going to hit you with this.
That's my read.
Yeah. Are you ready? I'm going to give you a quick test, and I'm going to see how you score on it.
Okay.
These are for the most part yes or no questions. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And it's going to seem weird, but just go with me. Do you like yourself?
Yes.
Perfect. Do you feel a sense of personal control?
Yes.
Okay. Are you optimistic?
No.
Are you extroverted?
Yes.
Would you say you have close relationships?
Yes.
Would you say you have a spiritual foundation?
Yes.
Would you say you have a balanced life between work, play, spirituality, body, etc.?
No.
Okay.
He's swiping left now.
Are you creative?
Yes.
I think I knew the answer to that one. Okay. So that's 6 yeses and 2 nos. Those are the 8 characteristics of happiness.
Huh. All right.
This dude was taking this test like that hearing test where you hear the little beeps. No.
He wasn't he?
Let's see. I should video that because I imagine it looked like that. You know?
Yeah, that's what I was imagining the whole time.
Which one of those yeses was the toughest, like where you're on the fence a little bit?
What was the first one?
Yeah.
Do you like yourself?
That one.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because he loves himself. He doesn't dislike. He's all in.
Like it, right?
That's right.
He loves himself at least twice a week.
Question.
And yeah, I don't know. What is that? I don't know. Maybe I do. Sure. Sometimes. Does everybody like themselves all the time? Then pay fucking attention.
Yeah.
Jason's like, pay attention because you're a dick.
So there are some correlations to happiness, by the way. And I thought it was interesting that none of them are money unless you're impoverished. So if you are in poverty, then getting money will be correlated with happiness. But if you're not in poverty, money won't make you happy. Physical attractiveness doesn't. Intelligence isn't correlated. Parenthood, which I thought you would find interesting, isn't. Age isn't. And gender isn't. The strong correlations to happiness outside of genetics are work satisfaction. And you know what the other one is? Can anyone guess?
Sexual satisfaction.
Oh, it's not. It's not.
Social intimacy.
Ooh, you know what? Sex and social intimacy is pretty close. Brian, do you want to bring those two guesses together to make the super guess? There's one word that sort of might mean those two things.
I don't have it. I'm just going to say like close. Well, I know you kind of covered it because you said, do you have more than like, do you have do you consider yourself to have close friends, like close relationships? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know.
That's a good guess.
That's what I would have guessed, but that was one of your 8. So
yeah. The word is community.
Right. Social intimacy.
Yeah. So if you have community, which seems a little larger than social intimacy or sex or just close relationships,
Remember,
correlated.
Intimacy has nothing to do with sex. I'm saying that's one type of intimacy, but social intimacy is that
Judges rule
community
on this one.
Yeah.
No, Jason said sex, Nick.
Right. But okay. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's community.
Wait, what was the first one?
work satisfaction.
Oh, work satisfaction.
Yep. So
I think that
what
work
do
satisfaction only gets it because we spend so much time at the job.
Because it's most of your life. Yeah.
Exactly, right? If you didn't have to do it, wouldn't be part of the equation.
Well, I think so. But I think, Nick, you could convert work satisfaction to what it is you're good at.
Or, no. I would say value.
Or what you do.
Yeah, value.
Like how you add value to your community. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. You have to be able to look and say, I'm doing this. I bring this to the table.
Yes. Your contribution.
Yeah. Which actually that applies to everything. What you bring to the table. Marriage, friendship. Yeah.
Community.
Mm-hmm. And I had this thought about that, which is, how does money disrupt community? Because human beings are communal beings. Going all the way back to our Homo sapien ancestors and even our Neanderthal ancestors, but less so, we have always moved and ran and hunted in packs. And now finding that community is really tough. And Nick, I know you've talked about it with me in private a lot of times, which is it's tough for you to find community where you're at.
Those was private conversations, man. Like,
Just lay it all out there. Shit.
you know what I'm saying? He just said it on air, like, hey, you told me in private, ...
I know, but it's great content.
Like Jason just said, if you think you're a good person, look at yourself.
Yeah, so just throwing this out there, Chris, that story I told you about the peanut butter and the dog, let's just not talk about that.
Not exactly.
Never trust the story with the host. I will lay that shit out there. So, but yeah.
Wait. Y'all heard that though, right? Y'all heard that though.
Yeah. They understand.
Yeah,
they understand.
Yeah. Nick, you told me in private. Just making sure.
Show above
ain't
all
nothing
else.
safe.
Show above
ain't
all
nothing
else.
safe.
So Nick, what is it? Is it just that you're working, that you have your community at home? Or is this story something? And Jason, Brian, chime in on this. Is this story sort of something we all face every day?
Well, I'll tell you. For me, the conclusion, at least one of the conclusions that I've come to for myself, is that I am not a fan. And in that, I don't have community around fandom, right? So like there might be a football team. People are a fan. They can rally around it, right? It means something personal, emotional to them. Religion, you're a fan of your God or your prophet. There's a fandom around that creates community. So even like from my favorite soccer team, I enjoy them and I'm going to stick with them. But there have been times when I miss games because I just forgot. I was occupied with something else. I wasn't such a fan that I'd locked their schedule into my calendar and made sure that I DVR'd all the games and I wasn't there wearing my blue that day. So it's the fandom that I have almost never had. I never had that emotional attachment to something like that, something external. So I don't have a thing to rally with other people around. And therefore, I've lost that connection with community. So that's what it is for me.
I always thought that one of the tactics you use for community is yard work, especially with your neighbors. Like you're outside doing things, and that gives you that window to speak to your neighbors and bring them into your life a little bit, or vice versa. No,
I think that's just an opportunity to, like you said, just to speak to them, right? It doesn't create community because there's nothing to rally around. There's nothing. It's not like every Saturday.
Small conversation.
Yeah, like the neighbor and I aren't out there every Saturday. Hey, cheers, drinking a beer, cutting the lawn. No, it's just I'm out there taking care of my lawn or doing whatever.
But you not find community through sport? Your teams that you actually actively are a part of?
No. So that was a challenge as well because I've always been active in a lot of different things. So even with my teams, I would go play and then I'd have to get somewhere afterwards, especially like when I got married and had kids. It was like, go play, come home. So they might be hanging out after the game, doing something. I'm like, I got to roll. I got to go do something. Or even like before marriage and kids, I had like a couple jobs. So I was like, well, I got to go because I got to go to the next job. So it was like always something I was bouncing from one place to the next. So yeah, it's been a challenge because there's always, I'm moving to the next thing. So yeah, not even with the teams that I've played on, so I'm actually looking forward to, the sports with my kids. And I told you guys, I was so disappointed the other day. I went to my kids' practice, like every parent out there, which there actually weren't that many because a bunch of them just dropped their kids off. They were on their phones. Right. I was thinking, hey, look, this is an opportunity to sit down with people, rally around our kids and the team and their performance and their progress. Man, every last one of them was staring at their phones. So, yeah, so that's what it is with me. Again, it's that the fandom isn't there, so the community was or has been lacking.
Yeah. And Jason, how well do you know your neighbors right now?
Pretty well. Yeah, I've got older neighbors, so and I dig both of them. I've actually gotten really lucky on neighbors. This guy behind me, he's younger. He's probably my age. We've got a fence, so I don't know him.
Right. So have you thought about taking the fence down? Or is it a dog situation?
No, it was. That's why it went up. But no, I'm not gonna take it now. I mean, no, I'm not gonna take it down. I'd put it up on both sides if I could, and that's not because I don't like my neighbors. It's just because I like to be naked in my backyard, and I struggle to do that.
Sunbathing.
Well, sure. I think everybody should be able to have just open sex in their backyard.
We keep our parks clean. Do you consider your neighbors part of your community? I mean, are they community for you?
No. Okay. I like them both.
Okay, but what? So what is that?
Like one of them's old. He's not, not terribly healthy. Sweet guy. Has he got to be 80? The other one, he's in his 70s, but he's an old jazz guitarist. So we talk a lot on that. And actually, his son just moved back in. He's a little younger than me, but no. I mean, and I have some friends. I have, a couple that live close to me that my wife and I have been close to for years, and they're my community. But yeah, it's a little hard to find. I understand exactly what Nick is saying. With fandom is a big part of it. Yeah, when you're not when you struggle with saying, yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, it's hard to do. I can get excited by a lot of games and events or whatever, but at the same time, if nobody else turned it on, unless it's the Major League playoffs, I don't really give a shit. And even then, it's still pushing a little bit. So yeah, that makes a big difference. Whether it's sports related,
right,
religion related, political, affiliation.
Well, I ask this stuff because we heard the strong correlations with happiness or work satisfaction and community, but I'm not sure if you had to say you had work satisfaction and ample community, and the answer to both of those were no, then you might ask yourself, are you happy? Well, yeah. Are you a happy person?
I think that's a great point, and I'm not. My wife would tell you I was a happy person. I might as well just be fucking honest right now. You got me on the couch, so why not, right? Yeah, so I've had the you're too sad conversation, but a lot of that is just I don't know, of not fitting in.
Right. That's a great point because Brian moved into the same neighborhood I live in, and his wife, I think, was a lot more standoffish than obviously Brian was, because Brian was used to me and Sal already, my wife. But we brought her in to that community. And we throw parties and get-togethers at my house all the time for large groups or semi-large groups. And Brian, what do you think it is that holds that community of people together when we do have these get-togethers? And
what holds them together? I think it's,
right, in terms of like feeling like you need to fit in because it's an eclectic group. You've got Asians, Black people, white people, people from different backgrounds, older, younger.
I think, if I had to say, it's acceptance. You know what I mean? Like what ties that like community of people, because it's always new people. I mean, there's sort of like the same core group of people, but there's always like new people that come in and out of because I mean, even at the older home that you'd have, get-togethers, Easter, whatever holidays. Mm-hmm. There's a group of, maybe say 10 people that are normally there. And then there's always, additional people that come in, and it's really, it's always very interesting because it's always someone's always new and everyone's different in their own way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that it's almost a little bit of acceptance because, if you ask me, do I know my neighbors well? Well, I know you. I mean, you're pretty close, but my immediate neighbors, no. And I don't think since I was a child, neighbors have made up my community. And I think we were able to, through technology, through advanced transportation and technology and communication improvements over time, we've been able to become more selective of our communities. Right. We don't have to say, you're my neighbor, so I have to be, this isn't the honeymooners, where, you have they're so close, Ralphie and what's the other guy's name?
Norton.
Yeah.
Norton.
Yeah. I mean, you have two complete polar opposite guys, right? But they fit together because they live in the same building and their wives are friends. You know what I mean? Like, so it's interesting. Like, if you look at how communities have always been portrayed, it's always been like, your immediate neighbors or your family. And now it's like, I mean, I've got pockets of different communities that I fit into. Right.
When that happens, it's astounding because, like, I was talking about my friends that live in this neighborhood. They moved here. We used to live in the same apartment building, just like the honeymooners, door to door. Like I could walk 4 feet, and like we're attached for life now. So you don't have to get that in community, in the neighborhood. But sometimes when you do, and it's just fantastic, and you become Ralph and Norton.
There's something special, Jason, about the community you can make in an apartment complex versus a house. It's almost like the distance between doors is just enough to just make you cordial. So when you come out on your porch, you wave at your neighbor and go back into your house. Whereas in an apartment, you share a lot of things. Everything is communal in a way. I mean, you share the same pool. You kind of share the same rules. Like you have to follow the same rules. You share the same noisy neighbor at a lot of times.
Same smells.
Yeah. When I had an apartment, we had a dude named Chris Crago. That dude would just walk in like Kramer. He would walk in. He would just walk in. He'd have a bottle of absinthe. He'd have cheese, and he'd have photos of his girlfriend naked. He was a photographer. And he'd be like, check these out. What do you think about these? And we'd be looking at her naked. Like her girlfriend was very attractive. We'd be looking at her and he'd be talking about the composition, like the shadow and the contrast and shit.
He'd be like, yeah, I get it. I like what you did with the light.
I like the side boob.
Right.
Yeah. Let me see that one of the zoomed in nipple again. I want to give you some feedback on tint.
Right. It's crisp.
So yeah.
Did you say tint?
Yeah, tint. Exactly.
Freshly pitched.
Yeah. So it'd be like a hookah pipe, absinthe, cheese, and his girlfriend naked. And that's what it would be. And he would just walk in. He would never knock. He would just come right in. So you can't do
Chris,
that when you live house to house. You can only do that in apartments. I agree with you, Jason.
Yeah, I got a question. So 2 things. So one, what's the source of this happiness equation?
There's 2 sources, and I'll put them in the show notes. One is triangulations, And the other one is Psych Central. And the Psych Central is pulling it from a book called The Pursuit of Happiness by Dr. David Myers.
Okay, and then what are is it top 3, top 4, top 5? How is it again? Like what are the pieces that make you happy?
You talking about the correlations to happiness or the keys to happiness?
Let's say keys.
The characteristics. Okay. There's 8 of them. You want them again?
Yeah, get them off real quick.
Okay. Happy people like themselves. Happy people feel a sense of personal control. Happy people are optimistic. Happy people are extroverted. Happy people have close relationships. Happy people have spiritual foundation or have a spiritual foundation. Happy people tend to have balanced lives. Happy people are creative.
Really? Happy people are creative?
Yeah, some of those are, it's interesting. And the reason I asked about those is because I have and it's funny that you said triangulation, because I have a model that I created myself about happiness. And it's a triangle where there's basically 3 pieces. It's freedom, community, and purpose. So to me, if you have those 3 things, then basically, I won't say that make you happy. I'd say those are the 3 factors that impact your level of happiness. So like freedom could be freedom of movement, expression, thought, community. I think Brian just, made the point that a community can look like all sorts of things. But to me, community is, achieved through shared values, shared experiences, shared interests, and shared goals. And then purpose gets back to what you talked about before when we were talking about work, but it's really the value proposition or value contribution that you have. So those 3 things in my mind are the things that impact your happiness. So
I don't disagree with it. And I think out on the internet, there's a ton of confirmation bias. So that I will concede. So if you think that happiness is correlated with money, you'll find 20 articles that tell you that. So I tried to find sources that were backed by psychology. And,
even that, I think,
hope
you can
the
back
best,
it out.
but you can, there's a lot of confirmation bias out there, Nick.
Yeah. Well, even with the money thing, I think that's something you can back out because money is an enabler, right? And money doesn't, you could have money in your hand. It doesn't make you happy unless you can use it to do something, right? So that enabler, what does that enable you to do? Maybe it enables you to go to a football game with your friends. That's community, right? Maybe you were able to buy a ticket for your friend as well. Well, that's your value contribution. The fact that you were actually able to go to that game, you had freedom of movement, right? So the money was an enabler to help you do other things. So anybody who says money, is a happiness factor, no, it's an enabler. That's all that is.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting that Brian sort of also turned my thinking, because I thought, okay, we had community, and then we started saying, this is mine, that's yours. And that's kind of the money model, and money disrupted community. But Brian kind of brought it up to the current day and said, no, technology is disrupting community. Because now, and I agree with that as well. Because now, or you can have an online community, maybe.
Yeah, it's redefining it. And the question is I think with that, it also introduces a bunch of negatives that maybe don't actually balance out the positives.
I think it's the word I would use. It's personalizing community,
curating community.
Yeah, sure. And I'm also just real quick, when I was really mad because I didn't be able to say the conjoined triangles of success, and the only person that would understand it is Chris. I almost dropped that Silicon Valley reference.
Such a
2 of the 3 wouldn't get it.
Yep. But the world probably gets it because it's a very successful show.
Conjoined.
Yeah.
Yes, Action Jack Barker.
That cast actually has blown up, and they're all doing really well. So I'm happy for them, and it's great. And I have a couple of rules, Brian, by the way, around community that I think helps keep things going. One, anytime there's someone new, I'll make the introduction. So it's really important for people that are new, or people that are shy, people that are introverted, to meet other people who they might be intimidated by. And just say their name, get to know their name. And I actually love inviting my oldest sister to these gatherings because she's so
She breaks down the walls.
She does. She's she can be ridiculous, but also it's just done in such a loving and, like you said, accepting way. She's
a toucher, isn't she?
She's in your face.
She'll
start the relationship by maybe offending you and then telling you it's okay, stop tripping, get over here, have a drink with me. And that brings me to rule number 2, which is I like to make sure everyone's a little bit tipsy, because if you can get some drinks in everybody, then things get loose. It feels like a family. We're all in there talking. We all have the same problems, and it ends up being a lot of fun. And instead
that's
of
the WD-40, man, that's a WD-40. That's the WD-40 for the community.
Jack Daniels, the WD-40 of community.
That's right. It just makes things move a little smoother, you know.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And so it's just, I have the best time when everyone comes over. We don't watch a game. What we do is play games. We'll bring out the cards. We'll bring out the board games, and it seems kind of childish and silly, but everyone has a great time. And I'm telling you, people will come over at 8:00 and won't leave till 3 a.m. And that's how you know it was a success is when, but within that, just you're drinking and you're playing, real conversations are happening. Real friendships and bonds and tribe is being formed, where you start to trust somebody to babysit your kids, and then you'll babysit theirs. Or you'll give them some money and they'll give you some money. And when the community is the way I define it, because I listened to what Jason said. Hey, these are my neighbors. They're not my community. It's probably because Jason feels like he can't count on his neighbors for the most serious things in life. You know, a cup of sugar, great. Beyond that, maybe not. And maybe same with you, Nick. And I think maybe if you define it, community is a group of people you can really count on that are pretty close to being willing to fight for you. And so how do you create that bond?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Like with me, community is around shared values, shared experiences, shared interests, and shared goals. It's not about common values, common experiences, common interests, or common goals, right? Mm-hmm. You got to share it.
Yep. I love that. And all that stuff brought me to this thought, because Jason has this cartoon he's been working on for a while, and I won't give it away, but it's a great idea. And it has a concept in it about time travel. And I started thinking to myself, like, what would I say if I met myself? Like if I traveled back in time and met myself. And then that morphed into a more interesting question, which is, what if I met my favorite artist? What would I say to them? Right? Like, it's crazy. Like if I could go back in time and meet Michael Jackson, like at any point in time, like where would I go and what would I tell him?
And like, how drastically disappointed would you be?
Yeah, maybe. Like, would I warn Michael, like, to not take Demerol? Like, would I warn him? Like, would I tell him in advance, hey, you know, you're going to have vitiligo, but the world's not going to understand? Like, what am I going to say? Like, who's your favorite artist of all time, Jay? Is it Johnny Cash?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Is it single? Yeah.
Or it could be a band. Would it be Pearl Jam? It
might be Pearl Jam, yeah.
Okay, so if you could go back and say anything to Pearl Jam, what do you think you would say?
I don't know. Yeah, I've thought about that.
If you travel back.
Travel back to like the beginning?
Or any point in time.
They've done well, so I don't know. Like they're not somebody that you
are you trying to warn them? I mean, what are you getting at?
You could warn them, or you could just, but it's up to you. Like you could tell them anything. You could just tell them how much you love them, or maybe you would tell them how much their music affected you or whatever, like their art. But it is compelling though, Brian, you bring up a good point. It is compelling, this idea of, would you go back and warn an artist of their own death? Like, would I go back and tell Tupac, don't go to Vegas. Don't go see the Tyson fight. It doesn't end well for you.
That's a great thought, because one of, that cartoon that you mentioned, one of the episodes deals with the March on Washington and Martin Luther King. and and the I have a dream speech, and do you tell him? Do you tell Martin Luther King? Do you let him take
change history forever?
Yeah. And do you fucking just
butterfly affect him? You mean?
Yeah. I mean, where does that go? You might disappear.
It's so crazy, Brian. Who's your favorite artist of all time?
I mean, living or dead?
It doesn't matter. Just your favorite artist of all time is the only qualification.
Liberace.
No, it's a group and it's Daft Punk.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow. Okay.
Maybe Brian already traveled back into time and said, "Guys, you're not handsome. Wear these masks. Trust me.
Yeah.
Trust me."
Yeah.
He took your advice from like an alternative Brian.
I sound like I disappointed some of you with my choice.
No, Daft Punk is the shit.
No,
Okay.
Oh yeah, man.
I've never heard of that.
All right.
No,
Like
Daft Punk is they're awesome.
Yeah, those
Groundbreakers.
Daft Punk is in that group. There's like a small cadre of artists where I don't listen to the music, I just buy it. And same thing with directors. Like with Darren Aronofsky, for example, I don't even look at reviews. I just go watch his movie. Like I'm ready to take the ride, whether it's a good one or a bad one. And
I thought you were going to say you just buy it. You just put it on the shelf. Like I never listened to it. I just put it on the shelf because I have to have it.
Well, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. I do that with tennis shoes. Like a lot of times I'll just buy Kobe's, and whether I like them or not.
The Daft Punk album, actually, the one that was was popular a couple of years ago. I just bought it, and I listened to it a little bit, but yeah,
you just buy. It's just one of those groups you just buy. Nick, who's your number one?
Man, didn't we already have this discussion?
Wait,
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. That's what I'm saying. I'm not a fan like that. So
you don't have a favorite
really
artist of all time?
Nah, I don't. I mean, especially like now, I can't really think about it. If you'd asked me like 20 years ago, I probably would have been like Michael Jackson, hands down.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'd have to say Michael. So that would be the only person that I can remember that I maybe was a fan of.
I honestly thought you were going to say Maya Angelou.
No, she's impactful and powerful. What's funny about this, if I were to come off the jump, like just when you asked the question, the first name that came to my head was Ronaldinho. So if y'all don't know, Ronaldinho is a Brazilian soccer player. He is one of the most skilled soccer players to ever play the game. And he's like a legend in international soccer. And what he can do with
a fan of him?
Yeah, right.
Were we not just talking about music? I'm sorry.
He said artist.
Artist, yeah, it could be anything.
Artist.
It could be a poet, it could be a painter, it could be a musician.
It could be someone who
But you're
dances
saying that he's an
ball.
artist with the soccer ball.
Oh, dude, yeah, he's.
No, yeah.
I think you're stretching. I don't know if it is fair. I think you're stretching the definition of this a little bit. But
No. When you ask me the
sportsman and as a swordsman, I respect it.
You're right. But when as I'm saying, I'm getting back to it. The first thing that came to my head was Ronaldinho, just because it's artistry with a soccer ball. So just putting it out there.
All right.
But I hear you, BC. I might be a fan.
Yeah, you might be.
Okay, all right.
This is some conflicting dialogue, isn't there, Brian?
Yeah, I was going to call bullshit.
Put it this way, but that's what I'm saying. There's a great appreciation, but I'm not recording this dude's games. I don't know when he's going to be on. I don't know. I'm not following him like that. So that's why I don't call myself a fan. I'm not following it. But when he's playing, I get to see. Oh, he's amazing.
There you go. You know what I'd say to myself, guys, if I ran into myself.
Yeah,
I would tell.
You'd say, "Hey, you're in my way."
I might say that if I saw myself today, but I would probably go back to when I was maybe 14, and I might say, "This is always tough." I might say to myself, "Get going." If I had like just a second to talk to myself, I might just tell myself, "Hey, get your ass up and get moving, get going right now. Start now." That's I think what I tell myself.
So you want to be all cryptic and scare the crap out of your 14-year-old self?
Yeah.
Like, is there a fire?
Be like a ghost. Get going.
Get up, right now. Get going.
Right now.
What?
But that's an interesting question, Nick, because would yourself understand yourself?
Not at 14.
Like, would yourself understand yourself?
With a buddy, he'd be like, what did he say? I don't
You're right.
that old man.
Fuck
Exactly.
that guy.
Get going. I am going. What is his deal?
And then I would double take and be like, that's my real dad. Plot twist.
Right.
So either that, or I might say something about fitness, like where I could like tell myself to learn more about dieting and fitness early, and then tell myself to like give that information to my mom, like maybe cut that shit off, or just warn myself about those kind of things. I might do something like that. I can't always go back and forth on it. Because a part of me is like, my mom is who my mom is. She was going to do what she wanted to do anyway, right? So why not go a different route? Anyway, it's a thought I was thinking of. It's one of these things that like...
No, I like it. It's anything... well, obviously you said I've been creating something with time travel. Anything time travel and that quandary. Like, what would you do? What would you say? You know, would you actually want to change or alter history?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't help to always go back to think of what Biff did, or Biff, right?
Yeah,
Biff.
What he did. I'd go back in time and say Bet Douglas.
Buster Douglas?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Bet
he was
Douglas,
at 400.
bet
He
the
had
house.
400 to 1 odds.
Yeah.
I know.
You know,
Bet
and
the
it's
house.
it's one of these funny things. Like you go back and tell yourself to bet it all on Douglas, and then like your girlfriend or wife stop you. like they wouldn't understand. They wouldn't understand.
Or because time is supposed to play out the way it's supposed to play out. So there's just an obstacle that's going to get in your way to prevent you from messing with time.
Oh, that's another
like
great
it
point.
doesn't really matter because you can't do it anyways. It'll stop.
Yep.
So that's like the Final Destination point then, Nick. Like from the movie Final Destination, like you might have dodged death once, but it's coming back around to get you because you're supposed to be dead.
Right.
But that was kind of... that was a little bit embedded into Back to the Future, because if he didn't rematch time as it was supposed to be, he would just disappear.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
That's right.
His limbs started disappearing, and he was playing guitar, and he looked at the picture, and his brother's gone, his sister's gone. Like, if he doesn't get the history back to exactly what it was supposed to be, he's out.
The people he cares
Yeah, I
about the
don't-
most. Yeah.
I don't know about the second movie, and I definitely don't. I've actually never watched the third. But Back to the Future is one of the best movies of all time.
Let me say this: Back to the Future.
I love the whole series.
Back to the Future. This is a lot for me to say. Back to the Future. If I were to think of life affecting, probably more important to me than Star Wars, which is a huge.
I'm out.
It really, yeah, dude. Two is brilliant. 2 is my favorite. I mean, the example you used was from 2. It was the Sports Almanac,
yeah.
but 2 is fantastic. 3 is great, dude. It's Cowboy and Mad Dog Tannen. Biff comes back. This is one of his other relatives. It's a brilliant performance. Watch them. Well, your kids aren't old enough. My kids aren't old enough yet. But if you got kids that are old enough, sit down with Back to the Future. It's fucking beautiful.
It's blasphemy. I know it's blasphemy, but Star Wars, the myth of Star Wars is almost greater than the actual films themselves, especially the early ones, just in my opinion. Brian, I know you have a very strong critique on the popularity of Tupac. Star Wars is my Tupac. Like, it's overexposed. I loved the last one. I did. Like, it's the bomb. I just think Star Wars is overexposed.
The first
I said it.
Really?
I've been waiting to say that for 35 years.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
It's just overexposed. No, they're good. They're good movies. But the myth you get about them is like the first Star Wars, is it better than E.T.? Is it better than Princess Bride? Is it better than Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Is it better than Back to the Future? I don't know that shit, man.
Yes, 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 and yes.
Oh my God. Okay. We're going to get derailed if we go this
Yeah.
We will.
Yes.
And I did see Wonder Woman recently. We need to talk about that, but we can get back to that later too.
If we keep going on this route, me and Brian are going to have to get off the podcast and pound each other's faces. Okay, so
Yeah, I don't know about that.
yeah. So week 3. We're in week 3 of our series, Balancing Parenthood and Marriage, for the month of September. This has been really an eye-opening month, because I think there's been this sense, guys, where we come into a topic and then it sort of bends and moves into a different place we didn't think it was going to go, because we're actually expressing what our imbalances are. And we're saying out loud, this is a shortcoming. So, whether it be us saying, hey, we can't actually achieve balance. I don't know if we knew that going into this, or whether it be us saying, you know what? I think my cell phone might be number one in my life or number one in my wife's life. When we initially thought, okay, it's our kids that are number one in our life. And maybe they are in spirit, but maybe not in action. Right? And it sort of paints this picture of, okay, what are our kids seeing? Right? Do they see you on the phone? Do they see you being affectionate with your wife? Do they see your wife on the phone or your partner on the phone? And do they see her being affectionate towards you? And then what kind of relationship is that going to create? Relationship expectations that are going to create for them when they get older? And it's a really interesting question. And I've thought about it for years. And a lot of times when me and my wife are arguing, like really heated arguments, I think about that very much because my daughters are watching, and I acquiesce in a lot of, I think my household, and you guys can tell me which one your house is. I think my household is a matriarchy, simply because I'm rarely the aggressor. And I want that type of love for my daughters with their husbands. Right? So.
No, what? You want what type of love?
The type of love that is patient and forgiving and is okay losing an argument that he knows he's right about, potentially, or admitting when he is wrong.
But that's not what your daughters are learning.
What
They're
are they?
learning the other side.
And they could be. And that's why you want to make sure you have that balance and reciprocate it. And that's a great launching place for this conversation right there. I mean, what do you think, Jason, your kids are seeing in terms of the relationship they're sort of have a front row seat for?
Yeah. Yeah, that's scary to think about.
And is it different because you have a boy and a girl too?
Well, before you get to that, I want to say that, it's interesting when you say that it's scary to think about, when we take it back to our earlier discussions about the kids being first, right? So like if they're first, then that scary thought is something we have to think about, right? Like that should be one of the first and foremost things in our head, is to confront that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do, but maybe in the last little bit, there's been kind of an elevation of times we needed to be aware. Like we try when we do fight, not to fight in front of the kids. That's important to us. It doesn't always. Sometimes, shit just goes down, but
right.
That's something we're aware of. There's definitely not any yelling at each other in front of the kids. We don't yell at each other that much, anyways. But we temper everything, and it's a little bit easier when they're young because they're not picking up tone and some of the words that you use and the way that you phrase. You can get away with them not picking it up. But yeah, it does need to be. You need to be very, very aware of it if kids are number one, because that's going to affect them. But yeah, I mean, well, I don't want to speak for your house, and I don't want to say it's man to woman, or woman to woman, man to man there. But I think it matters. So, like, when you said your daughters and your example that you're setting, like in that situation, I think they're only picking up her. Or, I mean, if they're picking up you, it's in a, don't take this the wrong way, but maybe they could be seeing your qualities of not striking back as submission, and saying the woman does this and is dominant and fierce in this way, and the man, they just, whatever man it is in my life, he needs to take it like my dad is, not understanding that, well, dad's not just taking it, because that's the tough part. How do our kids perceive it? It's so hard to measure. But I do know that kids typically measure it in simplistic ways. They don't understand the nuances of adulthood, or anything really, for that matter, above their meek years there. So that's a tough one.
Because here's the thing, Jay. You could take the outlook of, you need balance. So if I'm yelling and she's not, that's balance. If we're both yelling, that's extreme. If we're both not talking, that's extreme. If she's yelling and I'm not yelling, then that's balance. And so there's a bias for me towards that, achieving that balance, just to show the kids. Well, if one person's yelling and
the other isn't, that's not balance.
Sure, because you have one person that's approaching the discussion one way, and another one that has approaching the same conversation. So I think it's key to show your kids that there is more than one way to resolve a dispute.
Well, I mean, like, I'm taking these to extremes, but if you have violence on one side in one opponent and pacifism in the other, you don't have balance. You have destruction. So, I mean, I'm not.
Right.
It's the idea of you have an aggressor and a victim, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's what you have to be careful. I think that's true, because you have to be careful to not conflate pacifism with not yelling, or victimhood with not yelling, because that's not what because those things don't go together. Those things don't go together, because you can be assertive without yelling. So understand that there's two ways. You want to show your kids there's two ways to approach, maybe 10 ways to approach a dispute. So one doesn't mean lying down. One not yelling doesn't mean lying down. It just means I'm asserting my point in a way that is less aggressive and less maybe destructive. Right. So in that flip-flops, it could be me yelling sometimes and everyone else is cool-headed. So I think cool-headedness shouldn't be conflated with victimhood or pacifism.
And I think with that example that you're giving, Chris, I think, Jason's spot on with this one, is that the kids they have very simplistic minds, right? So they're not going to catch any of this nuance in the middle of balance and whatever. They're going to catch the behavior of the individual, right? So they're going to see the yelling from either one, and they're going to see some calm thing from the other. They're not going to say, oh, look, they're balancing each other out to come to resolution. If the yeller wins, if the resolution is on the side of the yeller, then the yeller won. If you're in a different situation and you're the calm one and it turns out that you were right and everyone agrees, well, you just happen to be the calm one who was right. And the yeller was just being annoying. So there's no balance in that. It's just, who wins and who loses.
There's balance for the marriage.
Who's not.
There's balance for the relationship, but not for the kids.
Well, not even in that, is because the balance only comes in if both people respect and understand the other one's position. Like, I'm going to yell and he's not, but he knows this is just the way I am. And I know that at the end of this, we're going to come to an amicable place. But if the person's saying, I'm yelling to get my way, there's no balance in that for the relationship either. So that's the piece where it's hard.
And I take it a step further, and it's something that I've tried to, I want to say I've tried, something that I've kind of come to a realization with counseling, because my wife and I do some marital counseling, and it's amazing to be part of that without like maybe necessarily needing to be. So we'll get into that later, but I suggest that I don't know, at some point for everybody. I think it's good, but just that if to take what you're saying, Nick, and to take it further, is to say that if there's not some kind of conscious compromise in that one is yelling, one is not, this is how I approach things, and the other one knows, like, but if you don't try to like curb that, bring that down a little bit, then it's not.
Right.
There's no good example for anybody else, and there's nothing good for the relationship. Like if you can't come to the realization of this isn't how I should be, I should curb this a little bit. They're not like this. The other person isn't like this at all, so I got to kick it down a notch. Very important. So whether the kids see it or whether your spouse sees it.
And that's the key, I think. So building on that is that, if the kids were to see that dynamic change, right, where both of you are now shifting a little bit in order to come to a compromise in the middle, that's what they'll see. Like, mommy normally yells, but she knows that daddy doesn't like that. So actually, look at her behavior. She's taking a different approach. And I'm sure quite obviously, and quite obviously they would see that you would notice it because you would probably say something or do something that showed that. And then you come to, the balance in between, because both of you have shifted a little bit in your approach to make sure that it does happen in a more amicable way.
But in terms of being in the moment, though, guys, and trying to present a masculine version of someone you'd want, let's say, your daughters to be with, or on the flip side, a feminine version of what you want your son to be with, if you, from, let's say, your wife or partner's perspective, right? In that moment, you have to decide, are you going to, and what is the approach you want your kids to see so that they understand. Yeah, they understand how relationships work when they get older. Because I know my example with my parents, they were married 35 years, and watching them fight, which they didn't fight very often, but watching them fight and discuss things really helped me to understand. So the best thing they did for me was to teach me how to compromise and how to work things out. And so I never viewed my dad as, I knew that our family was a matriarchy, but I never viewed my dad as a victim or a pacifist, because my dad handled things with great intelligence. You see what I mean?
So let me ask you this.
So I know you guys are sort of guessing that kids view it this way, but I can tell you from my experience, I didn't view it that way. I never viewed my dad as a victim or passive. I viewed him like one person's going crazy and the other one's really smart.
I'm not worried about.
See what I mean?
The boy. Yeah, but I'm not worried about the boy.
Oh, okay. So it is different for the genders then.
No. It's not different for the genders. I'm not worried about what the matchup is between genders when it's in relation to the passive person. I'm worried about what the relation and the pickup is on the aggressor,
right?
And that gender matchup, because that's the important part. That's like, so you didn't you were male and you watched your father, and you weren't like, oh, well, he's just being a chump and he's a victim, or, whatever. That's not what you got. But the female there can watch and go, oh, that's how I can talk to men. I can do that to them. Mm-hmm. I can yell at them and they'll take it, and they should take it. I watched my daddy take it. Mm. Like that's yeah, in the gender passive role, I don't think it's that important, but definitely it's very, very important in the aggressor role. Who sees that? Like, I really, well, and that can affect you too. So I don't know. Like,
it's like the John Mayer song, "Daughters."
Yeah.
Oh God. I don't want to talk anymore.
Right. But I'll just jump on that one and say that for, look at the aggressor again as the male in the situation, it could go one of two ways. One is, I don't ever want someone to speak to me that way. Right. So I won't be in a relationship like that. Or it could be, well, now I understand how to be in a relationship with someone who's like that. And it worked for my dad, so it could work for me too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again, it's,
and you're right. And you're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, the kids are seeing both sides, and they're seeing, okay, well, what is the effectiveness of both sides? And so what I meant by balance earlier was just exactly that. Was, okay, you're seeing two polar opposite ways to have a discussion, and you are going to see and absorb both. And I also think if kids are look at things simply, they also are a little bit too simple to say who won or lost. There is no won or lost unless it's unless it's a really terrible ending to that discussion.
The nobility in an argument, nobility in an argument is not visual. You don't pick up. It is nuanced. It is not out there in front. Like, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I think
do you see what I'm saying? Because they're seeing both. So your option in the moment
you shouldn't be fucking fighting in front of your kids. It
true.
happens from time to time.
True.
But it should not be.
I disagree.
Happening. Really?
I disagree.
My last one. Okay.
Yeah, I disagree. I mean, it's a form of communication. And if you don't equip your children to understand that sometimes in order to communicate, you have to communicate in different ways. I mean, because they're not going to meet people that are just always passive and nice and here's a lollipop and let me shake your hand. They're going to meet people that are assholes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to be aggressive. For me, I mean, I've all over the map with kind of how I feel about this. I grew up in an abusive home. So, I know that that's definitely not what you do. Right. Mm-hmm. That's not how you communicate, fist fights, parents always arguing. I get that. So me and my brother both took that from that. And then the first marriage, because of, me trying to overcompensate for what I grew up with, the first marriage, I was the extremely passive person and got ran over every chance I got. And through that, what my son picked up, my oldest, what he picked up was, I can't tell dad these things because dad's too sensitive. Mm. Like I've literally heard that from him. And so as a man, I've taught my son that I'm an overly sensitive person because I would always just take the high road, if you will,
right.
No matter what was said, I would always just kind of like, sure. Okay, whatever. And that was, that was me enabling her to do the things. And that's ultimately why that didn't work out. And it's funny that we're getting to this because me and my wife actually had the conversation 30 minutes before we got on about, how we do argue. Like me and my wife, we argue a lot and we'll argue in front of the kids. But we don't, it's not like we're arguing with personal attacks. It's not like we're attacking each other. But, for me, I've got a little girl that emulates my behavior and acts a lot like I do. And I've got a little boy that acts a lot like my wife. And so they actually argue a lot. But it teaches them to work through their differences, just like my wife and I work through our differences, because, where you're saying, well, you don't want to have a little girl that learns that it's okay to run over the man. Well, what if your little girl acts just like you, Jay? Because it sounds like your little girl doesn't, because she's, well, the way you described her, she's more of a bull in a china shop. She just kind of runs the house a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, my daughter is the exact like me. We mentioned community. I'm more of a, not necessarily like I like community selectively, but I'm more of a loner. She's more of a loner like I am. She communicates the same way I do, and so to me, I'm showing my son how to stand up for yourself as a man when someone, if my wife says something to me that I don't necessarily agree with, and to my daughter who already emulates my behavior, I'm showing her how to stand up as an individual. You know what I mean? So like for me, it's a little bit different, but I have made a conscious decision to not be passive and to argue constructively.
And to show, and to do that in front of the kids, and I think that's right. So I'm glad you said that, because that was good. I hadn't thought of it from that point. When I think of when I think of fighting, like if voices are raised and like we're like fighting, like it's not the topic. It's not something the kids want to hear. Do you know what I mean? Like we don't. There's no yelling at each other or abrasiveness over kind of how we approach how the kids should be fed, or like the fights that my wife and I have had that I don't want the kids to hear. Well, I don't want the kids to hear any of it. I don't even care if it's really quiet.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? Like,
to me, that's the qualifier. That's the qualifier for me. Is like I think there's a huge difference between standing up for yourself and fighting. There's a huge difference between a discussion and a debate versus an argument and a fight, right? So I'm in the camp of, we don't fight in front of our kids. We don't argue in front of our kids, because the point that we have for we don't fight or argue, period. But if we were to, we'd never do it in front of the kids, because there's a united front that we're always trying to show to our kids, right? We're together on everything, right? So if we need to work something out, then she and I will work it out, and then we come to the kids. But if we don't go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say hold on. I was just thinking to Brian's point on that is, I think that until he said that just a minute ago, I would have just said to you, yep. But then when he said that, I thought to myself, yeah, but that's not always true. Like, we don't, like, you can have a united front all you want, but like my wife and I are, have gotten in some shit. It's not fucking united. It's not united. Like, the kids can see it as united. And we've always, I've always been somebody that said that's very important, but it's not true.
Oh yeah, that's different. Like I said, my wife and I, it's the truth. We're united on these things, and we'll work out details. Like I said, we don't argue, we don't fight, right? So that's our relationship. We usually discuss things and work it out. I don't think we've ever had a heated debate about anything in our relationship, right? So it's just, sometimes it's a matter of, maybe I have an opinion on something, she has an opinion based on the facts that we have at hand, and then one of us realizes, oh crap, we didn't have that other fact. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, okay.
And so much of that, Nick, is based on temperament, right?
Exactly. And my temperament. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I'm cool as a fan. And that's how she is as well. So there won't be that. But even when it's little things where it's like if there's a back and forth about something, we try not to do that in front of the kids, just because we want to work that stuff out on our own. And then,
But aren't you kind of like robbing your child of understanding that people don't always 100% agree? Like, I just think that it's me personally, I think it's unhealthy. I think it's unhealthy to always have a like a pristine image of what your parents are. I think that them a little bit flawed and showing that they are able to communicate and they're able to work through problems together helps them in the long run. Because
I agree with that. But I think that so they might get little bits of that. But again, I think in general, I'm just saying my relationship, we don't do much of that at all.
But that's why I brought in temperament, because if it's a temperament thing, then it's baked deep down inside where you guys don't have the fortitude actually to
have the desire
to be yelling at one another because your temperaments won't allow for it. Where I think my relationship is the exact opposite of that, where we're so passionate with each other. You can find yourself in an argument with that. You're in the moment immediately. So there's no time to think about how to react sometimes. And 10 minutes later, I could be tongue kissing her against the wall, also in front of the kids. It's just like, it's like that. It's very fiery, our relationship.
Yeah, and our kids get some of that stuff, Brian, from our interactions with them as individuals. Like they'll see, they know that like in the household, I'm the enforcer with them, so there could be a disagreement with me and my son or me and my daughter. They're going to see that, they're going to be firsthand with that. And that's something that I got. Like, I didn't see my parents argue a lot, but I did have to debate my mom a lot when I was a kid. Like, that's something that she taught me, right? That's why I am the way that I am, is that it isn't, don't you get heated. There's no yelling here. There's no disrespect. It was like, you need to come with a legitimate discussion, like argument, a stance.
Come with your facts and your principles.
Come with your facts, come with your stats, come with the information to plead your point. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you do that, then you got legs to stand on. But if you don't have that, don't come, right? So I think that's probably what I'm going to end up, teaching my kids, and they'll get that from my interactions directly with them. So they won't be robbed of it. And I think that's because, again, my wife and I just generally don't have those types of arguments or fights anyway.
Yeah,
so
see, my wife and I, we do. Yeah, and it's because we have a lot of things that we butt heads on. And like I said, and I get everybody's households differently. For our household, my daughter is like me and my son is like my wife. And to me, it's more healthy for them to see us
work through
things, communicate, and work through them and still come out of it, clean, because when they're upstairs playing or they're, when they're communicating, when they're talking to each other, the same conflicts happen because the personalities are so polar opposite. I mean, we work great. Me and my wife work great together, but like our personalities clash a lot. And our children, since they both mirror us, they fight a lot.
So I got a question. Do you believe that when they're watching, they know that it'll all work out and be fine?
Yeah, I believe so.
And that to me is this idea of balance. And maybe that was even what Chris was potentially getting at. But if they can see that, and they can basically see that this is just the way they work through things, right? There's no winner or loser, but this is just the way they're working through it and everything will be okay. Then I think that's where the quote unquote balance is achieved, because they feel like both of you know that, like, that you're going to come to an agreement at some point.
So let me speak from the 6 to 7 year old kid hiding in his closet, not personally, not knowing, not thinking it's going to work out. Chris asked me last week, or it was the week before, when did your parents get divorced? Were you surprised? No, because when I was 6 or 7 years old, I expected them to.
Yep.
Right.
Because they, and so to me, it's my job to, because of, how they emulate us and how, if we were behind the scenes arguing and working things out, they're emulating us. Those conflicts are natural, and the kids have those same conflicts that we have. And so to me, teaching them, giving them, to me, it's all about giving the kids the tools to communicate. And that's how they have to work together to communicate as siblings. That's how I tackle it, because my parents didn't do that. And I anticipated them getting a divorce eventually. Like, I knew that was going to happen.
And I'll probably jump over to the side that I think it was Jason was saying about the content of the discussion. Yeah, again, this is something my wife and I we don't get into these kind of things. But if it were, for anything we would consider heavy, right, that's outside of the kids' purview. But I wouldn't say that. So I'll go back and kind of retract a little bit and just say that I don't think that we actively avoid the debate or discussion in front of them, because those are usually minor. It's little stuff. It's nothing big. They're not going to freak out, by a little debate about, where to buy the blueberries. Right. You know what I'm saying? But Nick, we're not running
the farmer's market, but go ahead.
You're right. We're not.
Nick, you brought up something, though, that was really interesting, and we kind of just slid right by it, but I want to go back to it. You said the way you work out arguments, you got that from watching your mom and your dad and actually debating with your mom a lot as a kid and as a teenager. And it made me think, okay, let's go around the room on that one, because that's a really interesting point as we think about what our kids are going to take with them into adulthood. Jason, what about your affection to your wife? Let's say, and tell me how much affection maybe is too much to show in front of your kids to your wife, or is that even possible? But also, like, what is the primary trait you think you got from watching your parents in their relationship that you brought into your relationship? And maybe tell us which parent.
So I think, I don't know. That's a great question. Like a lot of my father's temperament, the fighting. It's kind of, when you do it like that, it's so complex because you took small things from each one of them, good or bad,
Right.
I took my mother's unrelentless willingness to just fight for fucking hours on end. I got that one, the screaming, but I also, in some instances, got my dad's non-confrontational spirit, which is a weird kind of mix to put those two things together. And then I picked up a lot of my dad's taking care of his family and his wife, and kind of catering and being that guy that did everything. I grabbed some of that. So, oh man, it's really hard to say. It's really hard to split that up. But to what we were saying a little bit before is that for me, Brian said some things that, kind of turned my brain there. It's like, yeah, there's some value in that. But when there's a real fight, I'm just afraid the kids only pick up the negatives. Like, so if one person is just yelling, is kind of demeaning and overly demonstrative with everything that they say, like, yeah, they can still see how to work it out maybe with somebody that's being an asshole, but they might also pick up, hey, I can just be an asshole.
Well, I think there's a difference between teaching them to communicate and teaching them to be a bully.
Right.
Well, let me say this. If I'm yelling at my wife, okay, which I don't do, but I've come unhinged, and if somebody's going to yell,
and you're saying you got that from your mom, mostly.
I don't know. Like, I think if my dad was cornered enough, he'd do it.
Okay.
So it's like, maybe it's like my mom, but the male version of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because, my mother and I, especially when I was a teenager, bless her heart, she was going through menopause and I was a teenager. There was a fucking war in my house. Actually, probably should feel bad for my father in that. But so here's the thing. I will fight, and will fucking fight, and I will yell, and I will scream, whatever. and I learned this from home. And you know what? My parents they're still together, almost 55 years.
Oh, wow.
You know, that's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's great, sure. But you know what I picked up? Fight. Fucking fight, Jason. And when you do, kill them. Give them everything you got. You hit them as hard as you can, and you take them to the fucking floor until they surrender. Well, guess what?
And you don't mean that literally. You mean figuratively.
I mean figuratively.
Yeah.
With my words, with the sound of my voice. It hasn't served me well. Hasn't served me well in this marriage. I'm hoping I don't have to figure out how it serves me well in the next. But so, like, though I get it, what is with humans, especially as children, we latch on to some things sometimes that we're like, oh, well, they're going to see that we work it out. It didn't matter to me at all. I picked up those habits. I picked up those brawling habits. I was like, fuck it, I'm a fighter. Here we go. And I've always had it, except I'm actually really bad at fighting. I've just realized this with my wife. We just had this conversation a couple weeks ago. I'm not a good fighter, but I'm a terribly effective killer. Mm-hmm. I go in for it every time. You open up the door and I think I'm about to get hit. I don't really know how to spar with you, but I'm certainly aware of how to kill you. So, I don't know. I guess, I don't know which parent I picked up that kill you from, but I picked it up.
Right.
So it's just a delicate balance. I don't really want to hop on one side of the fence or the other.
But I frankly worry about it too. Whether it be me that's yelling and being incredulous, or my wife. On one hand, I say I hope what they're getting is they're getting this sense of, yeah, but never quit. We don't quit. We don't walk out on each other. We fight, but we don't quit. We don't give up. But on the other hand, I worry, are they getting the effective way to get what you want is through argument?
I think they're getting both. That's the good and the bad, because I think I probably got that from my parents. I think my wife probably got that don't give up. We're not leaving. This isn't just because we throw this down, we don't have to leave. But the other part comes through, and also there's the I'm not leaving, but I'm still gonna just burn this place down and make us live.
Right. Well, let's flip it. Let's flip it to what are the things your kids should see. So, Nick, if you had to think of 3 things that you definitely want your kids to see, or that you think are the most critical for them to see in terms of how the relationship works, what would it be? I mean, I have some in mind, but I'd love to hear from you on it.
Yeah, I think that the first one for me is just, love. Like we make sure that, they see that, and it could be little things like, us kissing, me touching her touching me, us saying, I love you, me cooking dinner, mm-hmm. or getting my wife's coffee in the morning. Cause the kids actually now they want to do that, right? Anytime my wife is going to make coffee for the next day, the kids are like, Mommy, can I help?
Yeah.
Right. It could be cleaning up before Mommy gets home. Right. So now the kids want to do that. Right. So that's the big thing, is that the first thing is love. You want to see that as much as possible, if not all the time. I think the second thing is that for me, that is that united front that we have with the kids, so, my daughter's testing us right now. My son never really did.
Right.
Maybe once or twice, but that whole thing where, daddy says something and then you go ask mom, mm-hmm. right? That's not cool. Right. We got to kill that. And my dad taught me that one a very long time ago. And it was very quick discussion. Like, he found out that I'd asked, I think it was like I asked my granny something after he said no, right? Because he was going to be gone, mm-hmm. and she was there. So she was in charge.
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, she's in charge now. I can ask her. And, well, that backfired. And that's what I want my kids to understand, is that, yeah, we're united on this. One says no. That's it. We're not messing around. And then a third one, I don't even know if I have a third one of what I want them to see. I think those are the two main ones.
That's good. Jason, I'm going to piggyback on something Nick said. How much touching is too much? Like, at what point can you over sexualize your kids by sexualizing your wife?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. You said something about tongue kissing against the wall earlier, and I think that might be a little bit much, but I guess it's all relative. You have to be careful, but no, I mean, I'm terribly affectionate with my wife most all the time.
Did you ever walk in on your parents?
No, but I heard them one time. I never did.
Okay, so did it fuck you up?
Yeah, it did.
I called out to my mother. I thought she was being.
Oh no! You called out to your mom?
Papa McConnell doing it.
Mommy.
I don't want to talk about it. I'm living.
Okay, I gotta know. No, this is enough. I have to know, like, how old
he's
were
hurting.
you?
He's hurting. He's hurting.
How old were you?
Stop crying, man. Stop crying.
Oh wait, I heard it twice.
How old? I gotta know the ages.
I think the first time I was like 10, and I just didn't understand.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question.
And the second time I was like 12, and I was
and you were like, wait,
and you knew she was knocking the boots.
Right, like I just got up and closed the door. I was like, I'm going back to sleep now. So for the first time, I was like, Mom, I don't want to talk about this. This is so fucked up.
That's the greatest shit ever, because here's the deal. As boys, you can't wait. Like, I was a very horny teenager. As a boy, I couldn't wait to have sex, but then you have to also remind yourself that the fact that you're here means your parents had sex. And that's something you can't even imagine. And that's so funny. Like, you can't even imagine it. Like,
yeah.
But it happened many times. And like, for me, at least 3.
Right.
I can't imagine it, but I can imagine what it sounds like.
Oh my gosh.
He just messed up his dreams, man. Like, tonight's just going to be janked.
It really is. But look, and that was fine. I think it's fantastic, and my parents probably should have been maybe more sexual in that sense. I was raised very religiously, and affection was all over, but it never bordered the sensuality, because sensuality and sexuality was somehow, I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to get into that shit with religion, but. What
was the last thing Jesus said on the cross? It is finished. That'd be some bomb ass shit to say if you're religious after sex. Is it called the sacrament or something like that?
Not even going there, dude.
It is
not even.
It is.
No.
It is
I didn't
finished.
mean to laugh at that.
It is finished.
I didn't mean to laugh at that.
And trumpets rang out, and the light came down, and it is finished.
Enjoy yourself.
Right, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's what you're thinking, Chris.
I'm sorry. Right. No lightning bolts. It's just
right,
I had
so
to.
Can you be over sensual? Of course. Is it important to be terribly affectionate with your spouse? I think so. If you want your kids to be like that, I mean, whether it's with the fighting, like they definitely pick up on the extremes. So if there's yelling in the house a lot, they will yell at their spouse, or let's go back before that. Maybe they won't have their spouse because they yelled so much.
Yeah. So let me jump on that. That's what I was going to say, is that the behaviors that they emulate, they're not waiting to get married to do these things. Right. So when it comes to the sensual or the sexualization of your wife, if that's even a flipping word.
It is now. MND coined it. That's our second time we've coined something now.
Right. So, but if you do that, then the fear, the concern, the risk is that in elementary school, if they find a friend they could be doing this behavior. It could happen in high school. It could happen in college. It could happen anywhere along that spectrum because they see this as a relationship, right? And this is how you act in a relationship. Or, oh, that's my boyfriend, right? What's the difference? We're together. Why couldn't I? Why shouldn't I? Or that's my best friend. Why shouldn't I? Or why couldn't I? So that's the risk you run depending on their age.
I mean, every kid has played house at one point in time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then you can sit back and watch them, and usually how they're interacting is how you and your wife or you and your spouse, whatever, you interact. So
agreed.
And I think as far as that combination of what we were talking about at the beginning, community, and then you bring that in with your relationship, what your kids see, eating dinner together, exercising together, being affectionate together, even arguing together, it sort of comes together as this, this ball of relationship complexity that your kids can emulate. And you're hoping that they get the best parts of that. And it really comes down to, again, that balance you're trying to create in your relationship. Like, how often do you argue versus your affection? How often do you eat dinner together versus microwaving a bunch of shit and everybody goes their separate ways? Right. So what are they seeing every day in your actual balance? Are they seeing you guys sit on opposite ends of the couch while you scroll through your Facebook feed?
Right. I think that's, we don't have to answer it. I think you were bringing up that question, but we don't have to answer it. But it's something that it's good, I think, for all of us to consider if we haven't. But it is, what don't you want your kids to see? I think one of the cool things about what Brian was saying about the decision to have these arguments, if you will, in front of the kids is that that's a conscious decision, right? Mm-hmm. It's not happening by accident. So because it's a conscious decision, he's probably more conscious about the outcome or conscious about the tone or how, if he does get loud, how loud he gets, so it's because it's a conscious thing. But if you're not conscious about it, then you're not considering the impact on them. So it's kind of like that's probably a good exercise for anybody at any point, just to say, what don't you want them to see? Whether it's, like you mentioned, Chris, the things you might be watching on TV, interactions with the spouse, interactions maybe even with your extended family.
Yeah.
That can be very impactful as well. So it's just be mindful of those things and then make a conscious decision about how to approach it. You'll likely be in a better position.
I love it. Before we get out of here, Brian, Jason, you got something else on this topic?
I think so.
I do need to rewind to the beginning of it, though.
Yeah, go for it, Mr. McConnell.
Because after you read off the 8 things again, I think 2 or 3 changed to no.
Okay, which ones?
For me. So there was the do you like yourself one, might have changed to no-ish.
Mm-hmm.
God, do you got them in front of you?
Yeah. The second one is, do you have a sense of personal control? And I think that one's that one's vague because the context of that is, do you feel empowered in your...
Well, that's my freedom. That's my freedom question.
In your work life, in your personal life.
Yeah, so no.
Okay.
I said yes before, but yeah, so no. Okay.
And then are you optimistic? So do you expect good things to happen?
I already said no on that.
You said yes the first time. I think.
No, I didn't.
Oh, maybe you didn't. Okay. No, you said yes to extroverted. Sorry. So you said no to that. You said you were extroverted.
But that might not be true.
You got to take a DISC test or like one of these Briggs-Myers tests to find out, I think.
Oh, no, I'm ENTJ.
Wait.
I'm extroverted?
No.
You're an ENTJ?
Maybe something, yeah.
Maybe so. I'm an ENTJ.
It might be Steven Spielberg and Mark Twain. That's all I remember.
Sorry, I'll look them up.
Okay.
Check it out. So
but
the E would be extroverted in that.
Correct.
Guess, okay.
But remember, I'm an ENTJ, and we talked about this before. I'm a natural I, but I become an E in order to
social,
for my value contribution. Yeah, my
be a
value
change
contribution. Yeah, I gotta be an E.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you. Okay. So
Okay. I think it's a yes to close relationships because you have a close relationship with the three of us, for example. A spiritual foundation. So do you have a spiritual or philosophic belief system?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. When you said philosophical, that changed it. Yeah. So I guess that one stays. I thought that was in question when you said spiritual, because that tends to fall on the side of religion.
Now, Dr. David Myers does focus that mostly on religion, by the way, and that studies show that highly spiritual people are twice as happy as people who are not.
Yep. Is that Myers of Myers-Briggs?
I don't know. Brian? You should find out for us. Put it in the show notes.
I don't know. You guys are some inside baseball shit right now. Yeah. I'm just kind of listening. So Dave, I don't think I've ever taken one of those tests.
Oh yeah.
I don't like taking those I don't like taking those type of tests. Like I don't know. I don't like horoscopes either. So
freak you out.
It's not the same thing.
Not even the same. You cannot be conflating horoscopes with.
I know. I just wanted to get that little dig. I knew I was going to get somebody with it.
I don't like crystal balls either. But shit.
Yeah.
Okay. So number 7 is you tend to have a balanced life. And I think you said no to that already. And then the last one is, are you creative? And you said yes to that. So those are the 8.
That's easy. Yeah.
So you're about half and half.
That's the weird though with creative people and happy. That one seems a stretch for me. But anyways, I just want to go back to that. Like I think it was wrong. But I was about half and half. Yeah. So.
But I don't think it. I think here's the thing. It goes back to Nick's triangle, because what Dr. Myers is saying is the ability to be creative is different than being creative. So if you're creative and you're not able to let your creativity out, then you will be unhappy. So this one assumes that you are being creative. You are a creative who is being creative, has the freedom to express. Sure. And so what you might be feeling is the inability to express as often as you'd like.
Sure. Okay.
Right. Versus the noun of, you are a creative. So we learned that Jason likes Back to the Future a little bit more than Star Wars was impactful, and that I think Star Wars the hype machine has gotten out of control to the point of smothering the content of the movie. Although I think the movie is great.
And it did take me to the age of 40 where I was finally, my son asked me, who's your favorite Star Wars character? And I realized that I had been denying myself. It's Han Solo. I don't mean to be generic. It's Han Solo.
Yeah, and that's it.
So I would have said Watto.
What would you have said?
I would have said Watto.
Andy! Oh my gosh. All right.
Well done.
People, you've been listening to the Married Not Dead podcast. To find show notes, read awesome blog posts, to find links of all the products or services suggested during the show, please visit our blog at marriednotdead.org. If you haven't already, you can join our podcast tribe on the Apple Podcast app, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or the podcast app of your choice. After you subscribe, please don't forget to do what?
Do it.
Rate, review. There it is.
Get some face paint so you can join our tribe, officially. I think we should have face paint. At least have a design and a concept behind that.
Well, let's rate and review first, and then face paint second.
Review first.
Okay, sure, fair enough.
Also, we're all over the internet. You can find us and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at _MarriedNotDead. You can search Facebook or find us on Facebook by searching for the Married Not Dead podcast page. Until next time, on behalf of my good friends Nicholas Buggs, Brian Comer, and Jason McConnell, I'm Chris Barkley. We'll see you all next week. All right, boys.
Cheerio.
Good night, boys.
We understand.
Absolutely. Peace. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/MND podcast. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from, including one of my personal favorites, How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia by Mohsin Hamid. Do not judge this book by its title. The ending had me crying in the middle of a 4-hour flight to Los Angeles. It's made even better by Motion's narration, and you can download How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia or any other audiobook of your choice today. Again, for listeners of the Married Not Dead podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. So, to download your free audiobook, go to audibletrial.com/MND podcast. Again, that's audibletrial.com/MND podcast to get your free audiobook today. You will not regret it.